This right here is a little presentation. I'm gonna throw you guys on hard start complaints. You need to know this because you're an engine performance. It's today's engine performance day. And of course, yesterday was kind of an engine performance thing too. So what we're gonna do is let y'all plow through some of this. I'm gonna give you an idea. You know what hard start complaints are about, right? Whenever you're actually trying to, you gotta know your semantics. If you say, if somebody comes to you and says, my car won't crank, what are you thinking?
I think fuel pump, ain't fuel. That's the first thing I look for.
What I'm thinking, if they say that, if they know what they're talking about, that means that you turn the key and you hear nothing,
Starter, bed starter.
or something else. But if it won't crank, that means it won't do anything. If it cranks normally but won't start, that's me. Remember that? Okay, so understand, cranks normally won't start. Hesitation is what? When you give it the gas and it hiccups before it goes, that's a hesitation. You gotta know how to spell hesitation on a work order without messing it up too, because a lot of service writers don't know how to do that. But anyway, back in the day, when I first picked up wrenches and started trying to get a handle on how cars work, I tell you, it's carburetor here. I would open that choke and I would operate we've now seen me do it on 350. You operate the accelerator and you see if you got 2 squirts of fuel in there. If there's no gas in the carburetor, it ain't gonna start, right? And I would also check spark. Typically I'd check spark first back when I was used to doing carburetor stuff. And that's the way it is now too. You always want to check your spark first. If you check your fuel pressure first and you get fuel on top of the motor, and then you check for spark and you set the motor on fire, you get a bad way, right? So check your spark first and then check your fuel pressure. And one time I was out there and I was following that criteria when I was working on the service lot. And I said, checking to say, okay, what's going on here? And so when I was checking for, I checked for spark, but there was some gas puddled up I didn't know about because somebody else had been piddling with it. And this thing caught fire, whoo, like that. And blow it out. And it caught fire again. You ever see them do that? Like the fire keeps coming back, you know, and I blew that thing out, so I just about blew myself out of wind, you know. Help, help. I couldn't leave because it was catching fire. Help, hey. You know, I was calling, hey. I didn't want to leave because I didn't want the car to burn down on the rims. You know, scary as all get out. I was probably 100 feet from the shop. Nobody was listening. All right, but anyway, we jerk the plugs out and see if our wetter city was used up. If the choke wasn't working anymore, it would set the plugs up. Well, we're not going to worry with that. Well, hard start diagnosis typically led down a different path in those days, and we're all talking about newer vehicles. So let's fast forward a bit and try to leave the carburetors and oil-filled coils behind. All right, now your contemporary wisdom in textbooks and some of your older stuff that the spark was supposed to jump 1/4 of an inch. That ain't enough. You need a good strong inch. It needs to be popping like lightning and scare the daylights out of you. And if you got a weak ignition coil, it's only going to jump about 1/4 of an inch. When you start trying to stretch it when they're spinning it, it ain't going. You know, if it quits jumping when it passes about 3/8 of an inch, there ain't enough there to start that car. I trained this one guy, and he went to work over at a dealership in Enterprise, and it was a foreign car dealership, but they brought a Cadillac in there as a used car, and it wouldn't start. And I said, well, "Tell me about your spark." He said, "Well, the spark's kind of yellow, and it'll go about 3/8 of an inch." What I tell you in class. You need a good strong, put a coil on there. If we put a coil on there, it fires up. And I'm trying to tell you, if you got a weak spark, typically you got coil issues. Now if you're checking spark on one that's got the coil pack ignition, you basically are going to want it to go from one to the other. You know, if you want to get a good test on that. Usually, not every time, but sometimes you'll get messed up like that, like on some of the Dodges. Hard start and Taurus. Back in the day, there was this guy brought his Taurus in there. It was a really hard starting car, and it would spin, finally start up. And the long and short of that was everything was like it was supposed to be, but it had a spark of the coil on it. Had the coil, one of these E-core ignition coils. It would only jump about 3/4 of an inch, which was enough to start the car, but it had to spin a while. And that turned out to be just an ignition coil that the car would run just fine after it started, but it was hard to start. And that was tricky to find that one because if it started, I felt like in those days, if it started, the coil wasn't going to be what it was, but it was a hard start. That's an unusual problem, but I ran into that one time. Just wanted to share that. Now, if you test it for spark, it's good to have an adjustable spark tester. We got these here. Now, if you've seen these spark testers, and you need to be able to dial that thing out in a pretty strong, distance. And like it needs to be scary. This one here, some of them got this tube here. What's that little hole right there for? Anybody know? It lets ozone out. O3, and you got sparks jumping, it makes O3. And O3 is something that's got to come out because it's going to corrode it, the threads on that thing. Don't have. That's the only reason I can think of why they put a hole in that spark tester right there. So leave the O3 out. You've got to have an adjustable spark tester. That's rule number one. Now the Bronco that was started only with a spout connector disconnected. Spout connector is what you pull out when you're gonna set the timing on one of these Fords, so that it's got a distributor. And so when you pull the spout connector out, it would fire right up. But if you put the spout connector in, it was terrible. And it turned out, it was spin, it was really hard to start. But it turned out that it had a bad battery cable to engine block connection. I put a service bay diagnostic system in there, and I saw that that was a really scratchy, ugly ground when you was trying to start it. Now, why unplugging the spark output connector would make a difference, I'm not sure. But I do know I had to fix that by cleaning that ground box, and that took care of that. Burn through rotors, faulty ignition module. They're more likely to cause sputtering and stumbling than hard starting. I'm talking about the burn through rotors here. The rotor, if there's too much resistance that is going to, in the plugs and the wires and all that kind of stuff, that spark is always going to be hunting somewhere else to go, and it'll punch through the rotor sometimes on the ones that have a rotor, and the old HEI ones, just wouldn't start. You'd have a no start, you have no spark, pull it off, pull that little tab up, or then you got a tab on it, and you look and see your rotor burn through. Now on some of the other ones that had like the distributor that had more space between the coil tower and the little shaft underneath the rotor, there was this Bronco 2 that this one mechanic was working on over there, and he ran into this. I'd seen this on a Mercury Tracer for the first time. You give it the gas and it go, oh, and then it come back, and but if you covered up part of the intake with your hand, it would boom like that. And I say, and it sounds like a fuel problem, right? Because you're blocking some of it. That ain't what it was. What it was whenever you would cover it up, you were actually reducing the amount of air in the cylinders that the spark had to punch through, and it would make it accelerate better. And all it needed on that one was a rotor. Well, that guy worked on it for a couple of hours, cleaning injectors, doing a whole bunch of other stuff, and I said, look, you need to check the rotor on that thing. He just couldn't get it because when he capped it off, it would rail up. He said, it's got to be a fuel problem. It wasn't a fuel problem, it was a spark going away whenever it got that extra air in there, and it was squeezing more. What's that spark got to do? The spark's got to punch through the air, right? And if the air is compressed, it's that much harder. Is it not? Okay. All right, with the spark either verified or eliminated, the next thing we need to know about it, how much battery voltage is still available in the PCM with the starter doing its thing. If it drops below about 7.5 volts on a lot of these vehicles, Ford in particular, Power Stroke diesels too, it's not going to even operate the injectors, even though the engine's spinning pretty good. The Ranger will do that. I heard where the Ranger will yeah, like that, but if voltage goes down below what that PCM will accept as the threshold, it ain't gonna start. And if you hook some jumper cables to it, fire right up. And that's confusing if you don't understand what's going on. Hey, look at that. Sure. Okay. That works. Got me a stoplight switch. All right, that's pretty cool. That's for, where's that stoplight switch? Kayla, where's your stoplight switch?
Oh, man.
That was a bad throw, I'm sorry. If we ruined it, we'll just have them get rid of it. All right, however, anyway, let's go on. If the system voltage is sufficient, we need to know if the injectors are clicking. So if we got fuel pressure, and we need to know, is the fuel being delivered? Now remember what I told you, if you turn on the key and you hear the fuel pump, the engine controller's awake anyway, right? This is more of a hard start than a no start. And the injectors are clicking, you got a crank signal. Because the crank signal is where the injector clicking comes from, right? Now when I'm giving y'all, when I bug one out here for some kind of a way, and if you're spinning it over and the injectors ain't clicking and you ain't got no spark, suspect the crank sensor, okay? Of course, if I take the crank sensor wires from the engine controller module, on the PCM connector on that Ranger, and I flip them around backwards, you'll work on that thing for a month. Because it'll start, they'll try to start and it'll, you'll get 200 RPM, then it'll go to 0 on your scan tool. If you just flip them around backwards, boy, you can just beat a mechanic's head in on that thing. But you got to make sure that 21 and 22 in there are going to the right one. All right. The data stream's not giving you real world information like a scope. It's giving you window into what the PCM will trying to do and updates pretty slowly, right? So anyway, so let's talk about fuel delivery in a simplistic way. The Tecumseh lawnmower engines have that funky rubber bulb. You ever see that little bulb you got to pump before you start a lawnmower? That's the same deal. It's like an accelerator pump. Fuel injected engines have to do the same thing. They got to give it extra gas when they're starting. That's the deal. All right, so fuel injected engines. You remember that little board I got wired up out there? So whenever you start it, it flashes all the injectors at once, and then it starts flashing them in sequential. That's what it's doing. It's actually wetting the manifold. Back in the day, we had to pull the choke, and then the choke got to be automatic, but you still had the accelerator pump. And it also, when you operate your throttle, you're gonna have extra accelerator pump squirts, you know, which is acceleration enrichment on those things. All right, so moving the throttle while you're spinning the engine might put too much fuel in there too. And if you put too much fuel, you're not gonna start. Now, the importance of idle air control or the electronic throttle control. On the ones that don't have electronic throttle control, if that idle air control doesn't open up when you're starting it, it's probably not going to start. If you don't have enough air going in there and it's double pulsing the injectors and it doesn't have the extra air supply, wet spark plugs. You find that idle air control sometimes will stick or they'll get where this don't work. You have a real hard starting thing, and it's got to provide that needed air. You look at wet spark plugs like that right there. You pull spark plugs out and they're soaking wet, it ain't going to start. Of course, you need to find out what wet them and all that. So, rich fuel supply product, if somebody cranks it up and they move it from one place to another or just drive it a real short, just like a used car lot people, you know, they move it from here to there, move it from there back over here because they like to shuffle their cars, make you keep looking over there at the lot. And what they wind up with is they've done it so much and they've let it run rich and cold so much that they wind up with a bunch of wet spark plugs and cars that have the cylinder walls washing down, all that kind of stuff. But they don't want to run it long enough to warm it up because it burns gas. You get me? All right, let's move on. Throttle position sensor that's drifting into the wide open throttle range with no throttle movement can cause intermittent hard starting because most fuel injected engines, not all of them, but most of them will shut the injectors down at wide open throttle. You can mash the gas pedal all the way to the floor on a lot of vehicles. When you spin it over, it won't even start. And you can really impress your girlfriend if you're sitting there at the burger barn and you get ready to go and she's not watching what you're doing. You push that gas pedal all over the floor. She goes, "What's that?" "Oh, sorry, baby. I know what to do." You go out here and you act like you're doing something. Boom! Man, she thinks you're a hero, right? You know what I'm saying?
I'm allowed to do that.
Right. But I mean, sometimes, like if you want to, this is also useful to know if you're wanting to spin the engine. Like for example, I was talking about you can put the voltmeter on the battery and spin the engine for 15 seconds, and see if the voltage drops below 9.6 volts in 15 seconds. You've actually matched that battery to that car. Is it sufficient to start that car? But you can do that by mashing the gas pedal all the way to the floor. Remember though, if there's a little gas pedal up in the manifold, it may start up. So be ready to let off the gas if it starts. You know, don't let it run away with you. All that kind of stuff. All right. And engine coolant, intake air temperature sensor. They can develop an open circuit and cause hard start issues and wetting the spark plug. Look at that. See the readings on there? 41 degrees on the engine coolant and intake air temperature is 104. That's the enhanced tool that's substituting one. If you look at the OBD2 generic, you'd see 40 below zero. And you know there's a problem. But when it substitutes that, if that's 41 and that's 104, it's going to be flushing gas in there like you wouldn't believe. And it's going to lift the spark plug. Fuel composition sensor on a flex fuel vehicle reports more alcohol than the truth. The PCM might overfuel during starting and foul the plugs. We had one in here, an 04 Tahoe, sitting right there. That whenever she said it wouldn't start, a lot of the time they just spins, then it might start, it might not, all that kind of stuff. Well, another scan tool found the fuel composition sensor reporting 45% alcohol. I called the guy up, "You use E85 in here?" He said, "No, I'll never put that crap in my truck. I always use regular gas." What's that telling you? It's actually over-reporting the alcohol, and whenever it's got more alcohol in it, the PCM says, "Whoop, I got that much alcohol, we're going to need more gas." See? Because the alcohol don't burn as good as the gas does. All right? Well, dripping injectors can cause hard starting as well. As a matter of fact, one dripping injector can flood a whole engine all by itself. What it does is it puddles up in there, and you know, it steams up and all that. When you crank it up, all that goes in there and condenses on the spark plugs, and then they won't fire. Seen that before. This Thunderbird right here I had one time. This guy said, they just breathe on the key, this thing fires up, and all of a sudden now it's taking me about 30 seconds of spinning to get it to fire up. And so what I found was, if you pull the injectors out, and I pulled the injectors out of his just to look at them, and I saw 3 injectors with clean tips. Right there, those injector tips were really clean on 3 of the injectors, all the rest of them were dirty. The dirty ones weren't leaking, the clean ones were. Got it? And if you got one that's skipping on one cylinder, if you crank it up while it's skipping, shut it off, pull the plugs, see what you see on the plug. If one plug is sooty and dark and the other one look good, then you got a driven injector on that cylinder. Alright. Alright, now a hard start due to an injector drip will usually show up hot and it'll spin for a little bit. And so you spin it the moment it fires up. That's what I was talking about a minute ago. The canister purge valve should be closed when it's not energized. If it's, let me see what this is all about. Hey Larry, go ahead. That's outstanding. All right, so it ought to be closed when it's hot, if it's not energized. And the hard start issues will happen after refueling. If you've got that, when you're pumping gas in there, if it's pushing fuel vapor into the intake, it's gonna make that thing start hard. Hey, I got cut off, what's up? Yeah, come on over, I'll be here. All right, but anyway, I've seen this recently on 3 different vehicles. How many of you remember Judy's little Ford Edge? Remember what the symptom was on that one? Hard start. Why? Canister prairie valve bad. My son bought a 2013 Ford pickup. Right after he bought it, he goes, when I gas this thing up, it takes 20 minutes before it'll start. And I said, that's the canister prairie valve. It's pushing that vapor into the intake, and it convinces wets the plugs. You gotta wait till they dry off before you fire it. The first time I ran into that years ago was on a little Kia. And that's what you do. You take the canister purge valve off. If you can blow through it without energizing it, it's bad. Is that complicated? You know, find the canister purge valve, pull it out. If you can blow through it like a drinking straw or at all, usually that's what happens. It's supposed to stay closed if it's not energized. All right. So, woman called me about her daughter's '97 Nissan Altima. It had been in a local repair shop for a few weeks, hard cold start, and they finally gave up on it. She told me the car had a history of minor fender benders and all the front end. She wondered if that might have anything to do with it. Well, the crash info is interesting, but you know, I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. So she says, call the guy that worked on it because he's out of ideas. So he said, it's really hard to start cold, but you can spray some carburetor cleaner and manifold and fire right up and run just fine the rest of the day. As you know, she don't, it's only hard start first thing in the morning. What's this sounding like? Huh? First thing in the morning. Hmm?
Somebody came in here talking about theirs is doing that. You remember that?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. What was wrong with it?
I don't remember, I ain't worked on it.
Yeah. Second-rate amateurs. All right. Now then, so you picked up on that important piece of data. He could add fuel and it would start normally. Right? So what did that mean? As mentioned previously, TP sensors can fail in the range, drift in voltage with no throttle movement, and cause that kind of anomaly if they drift high enough. But even with a TP sensor near wide open throttle range and PCM in clear flood, the engine will start if the RPM goes over 400. All right, so we got to check it. We got hands-on data. We got a hot, bright spark. Bap, 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 bap. That ain't it. Spark timing, dead on the money, because that was one you could adjust it. It was like 97 miles. OBD2 scan tool, no codes, no glaring discrepancies in the data stream. I say it was a 97. Even if I've got coil pack ignition, a lot of times I'll check the timing with a timing light just to see if there may be something screwy about the way it's firing the coils, you know, so just keep that in mind too. Fuel pressure, normal, 40 PSI off, 30 PSI running. No leak down and shutdown. We ain't got a problem there. Battery voltage with the starter engaged was 10.9 volts and holding steady. We've eliminated a bunch of stuff, haven't we? What we've done is we've gone through one thing after another. What could this possibly be? After the Altima sat for a little few hours, the intake air temperature and engine coolant were about 10 degrees apart. But then I said, wait a minute, it's got a heater. The hood's open to that gas heater. You know them heaters over here, how they'll cook the back of your neck? Mm-hmm. You know, it was making it a little warmer on that. So I said, that the IAT was the warmer of the two sensors, and it was between the inlet and the air cleaner where the ambient air could reach it. So what was even stranger was the intake air temperature sensor had just been replaced. Somebody put one of those on there, probably got working on it. He didn't say that on the phone though. Well, unlike the OBD2 enhanced data stream, OBD2 generic says 40 degrees, you know, below zero whenever you got a bad IAT sensor. And all the temperature sensors should read the same after a thorough cold soak. Always remember that. Look at transmission oil temperature, intake air temperature, engine coolant temperature. They ought to be within a few degrees of each other, unless the sun's shining on the hood or something like that, you know. All right, so I thought about it. I slept on it. I reflected on the wireless schematic, the fact that there's a dedicated start signal wire from the ignition switch to the PCM, and there's a fuse in that circuit. If the PCM doesn't know the key's in the start position, it won't know it's supposed to double pulse the injectors. It has to know that, right? Here's the schematic. See, it's really simple. There'll be a pop test on this afternoon, so memorize it in the next 10 seconds. All right, so see right here? That's the ignition switch right there. See that fuse going to 20? Right there. See that? That fuse right there is going to 20. Pin 20. So what we did was we unplugged the engine controller, found pin 20, got my little test light over here. You know, I know people say don't use a test light, but that's nonsense. So I got over here and I go into pin 20 with this PCM unplugged, and I say turn it to start. And I turned it to start, there was not a darn thing there. All right, so what we did was we went and found out the fuse was missing.
Wow.
somebody had pulled the fuse and put it somewhere else to make the radio work or something. What it was. And that's why that's why they wouldn't start. Wasn't blown, somebody just jerked it out of there and put it somewhere else. You ever seen somebody do that? People will say, well, they'll just pull a fuse from somewhere else, and if everything's all right, they don't worry about it. So they feel like I didn't need it.
Already?
That's all it was, yeah.
No, that's a different one.
Yeah. All right, an engine suffers from lack of power during acceleration. A vacuum test is being performed at 2,500 RPM. The vacuum gauge needle drops slowly to 10 degrees mercury. Which of the following is causing these vacuum test results? You got 10 seconds. Everybody answered it already? The vehicle has a momentary hesitation only during acceleration. This is most likely caused by what? A faulty exhaust gas oxygen, EGR valve, faulty oxygen sensor, a faulty positive crankcase ventilation valve, a faulty throttle position sensor. One of those four. Moving on. How should spark be checked? With plastic pliers, a well-insulated screwdriver, or an adjustable spark tester? Have a girl from the office hold the coil wire while you spin the engine. With your finger. Stick out your tongue. Anybody misses that question, you're going to shame on you. With the scan tool has been connected, what should you check first? A, diagnostic trouble code. B, PID data. C, inputs and outputs. D, none of the above. When the scan tool has been connected, what do you check first? What do you check first? All you guys have had a scan tool in your hand multiple times. What you gonna look at first? What a lot of people will do is they'll scan every module on the car so they can sit back and play with their phone while that happens. That's okay if you're looking for a crazy, I'm not saying it's a bad idea to always do that, but if I'm going in there looking for something, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see what codes I get out of the engine controller, control unit, PCM, read codes, poof, I'm done. You hit scan, how long does it take to do a scan all the modules on some of these cars?
A long time.
25 minutes or, well, it seems like forever. All right. And I'm not saying that's not a good practice if you're looking for some strange network problem or something that could be interrelated modules, but start out on just looking at the engine controller. If a battery's strong, the engine spins normally, what should be checked first for no start? Fuel pressure, spark, engine oil level, spark plug condition. I covered that earlier. Engine coolant temperature sensors on today's vehicles are typically left-hand thread, positive temperature coefficient thermistors, negative temperature coefficient thermistors, or made in Mexico. His pen was being hard-headed. "93 octane gasoline burns blank than 87 octane gasoline. Slower, faster, cleaner, or more completely." We covered this in a previous presentation. I'm just seeing if you remembered it. A 6-cylinder engine has a firing event every how many degrees? Remember the formula? Cylinder power balance test is being performed on a 4-cylinder engine. The number 3 cylinder is disabled and no drop in RPM is noticed. Which of the following is correct? A, this is normal. B, a significant drop should be indicated. C, there should be no drop at all. D, there is no such thing as an engine cylinder balance test. Power balance test. Ready? Oh, you weren't ready? Sorry about that. Let me back up. After performing a wet compression test, the pressure in each of the cylinders is increased, but remained below specification. Come on in, Larry. Come on in. Technician A says this is caused by incorrect valve timing. Technician B says this is caused by worn piston rings. All right, let's go back and start over. We're gonna whip through these things. We got just a minute or two to do this. All right, what'd you get on this one here? A's a cloud cat. Yep, y'all seen this here, haven't you? All right. Vehicle's got a momentary hesitation. That's gonna be a Delta, faulty TP sensor. It ain't gonna be none of this other stuff. It's gonna be that right there. Most likely cause of it's gonna be a faulty TP sensor. How should spark be checked? Stick out your tongue.
Stick out your tongue.
Plastic pliers, a well-insulated screwdriver, or an adjustable spark tester. My shop foreman one time says, hand me a screwdriver, he's gonna check a spark and all. And I just grabbed one out of my box and handed it to him right quick, because I was doing a lot of stuff. And I looked over about the time I was checking the spark, and that screwdriver had a crack in the handle. And I saw that spark go through that crack in the handle, and give me, ah! He thought I did it on purpose. Of course, I did pour Mr. Pippin his coffee one time. He didn't like that either. He said, I was tasting that stuff when I went to bed last night. All right. Come on in here, Ray. When the scan tool's been connected, what should you check first?
DTC.
Diagnostic trouble code. That's what I like to check first. That's what you put. If the battery's strong and the engine spins normally, what should be checked first for it'll start?
Video pressure. B.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You said fuel pressure. Why would you not check fuel pressure first?
Oh yeah, you just.
You don't want to set the fire to the motor, so you check spark, then you check fuel pressure, right? You check fuel pressure and there's gas there, and then you check spark, pow! Then you got, you know, like me blowing my, trying to blow it out, you know, and all this stuff. You ever have one catch fire on you? I used to set one on fire about once a year, not on purpose. One day this Bronco pulled in there, and this guy over here is a jumpy guy. He saw a little bit of smoke coming from the corner of the hood. He said, open the hood, open the hood. So he raised the hood and fired it. Ah! Open the hood again. It scared the thing out of him. Anyway, when engine coolant temperature sensors on today's vehicles are what? Negative. Negative temperature coefficients are mystery. All right. Now go through that phone and see who it is. Hear it ringing in there? I don't know. They called me 2 or 3 times. 93 octane gas burns how?
A slower.
Slower. That's right. 6-cylinder engine has a fire in a bit however often.
D.
D.
I thought it was C.
C.
Yeah.
C. 6 into 70, 720 is what? 120. Right? Yeah. That's no problem. Cylinder power balance test is being performed on a 4-cylinder engine. Number 3 cylinder disabled. No drop in RPM. What's wrong?
Should we be?
Yes, it should have a significant drop if it's not skipping. And finally, after performing the wet compression test, the pressure in each cylinder is increased but remain below spec. What's that?
Let's go with C. And C.
Let's go with rings,
Rings.
piston rings, right? That's gonna be
B.
B.
Technically, I was
You
right.
got half
It's
of the answer right.
How'd you do? How'd you do? Who made it? Who made
That
100?
stupid fuel.
Who-
I missed 3.
You missed 3. How many did you miss?
Yeah, I missed 2.
How many did you miss, Kayla? Huh? You missed too many. Okay, how many did you miss?
I missed 2.
You missed 2. Noah?
I missed 3 and then one of them, I'm not sure what you said the correct answer was on.
I had that funded.
Oh, okay. So what about you? What number was it?
Third.
Huh? Okay.
D. You said number 2?
We're good to go.
OJ.